Welcome, I'm Bill Brewster and this is Drywall Techniques. This segment is Series 5, Arches. So let's get familiar with the tools and some of the material we'll be using on this project. Here are a few of the tools we'll be using today. A drywall screw gun, snips, rubber knife, drywall pan, a 6-inch knife, a 10-inch knife, and a 12-inch knife. And here's some of the material we'll be using today. Fiberglass tape, bullnose flexible corner bead, 40-minute hot mud, and our all-purpose compound. At this point, our carpenter is framed in our arch that we'll be using today. We hung sheetrock over the opening of the arch, used roto-zip and roto-zip out the sheetrock. So at this point we have exposed studs. If you were going to be installing a 90-degree corner bead, it would be fine to be able to run it somewhat flush out here at this point. But since we're going to be using bullnose, you need to hold it back farther. That way the bead would conform to this particular corner. And before you start hanging your sheetrock, make sure you have plenty of backing in place. And now you're ready to start installing the sheetrock. You'll be starting off at the center part up here and working your way down. Like I said before, make sure you have plenty of backing. As you come down through here, at this point, this angle or this corner is very, very round. So at that point, the quarter board probably won't flex very well around it. So you'll need to score the back of the 1/4-inch sheetrock along this particular area so it will take the transition much smoother. On down and then piece in from the bottom. This will be the area right through here which will need to score the back to be able to make this corner, this tight corner. We're going to need to score the back of the board about every 1.5 to 2 inches across here. Make sure your sheetrock stays aligned as you're screwing it off. And now we're ready to install our corner bead. There are a couple of different ways to install your flexible corner bead. One way is using the spray-on adhesive. It sprays on, but it bonds very, very hard across here on both sides, and then you apply your corner bead. The other way to do it is to put the corner bead on and staple it along the edges. But the method I'll be using is hot mud to be able to coat both sides liberally as well as the center part. That way it gives it a lot of strength on the back of the corner bead once it dries. The hot mud comes in powder form. You dump water in first, about half a paddle, and then add your hot mud in the thirds of a bag at a time. Mix thoroughly. You want your hot mud somewhat thick, that way the hot mud will stay in place and actually hold your metal into place. Now you're ready to pre-fill and start mudding in the corner to install your corner bead. You want your mud somewhat consistent. You want it runny. You want to be able to pretty much stay where you put it. Even though we're using quarter board, our first coat, tape coat, our corner bead's being installed with hot mud, and our first coat over the corner bead will be installed or coated out with hot mud. It's going to give it a lot of thickness and a lot of strength to help reinforce this 1/4 inch board. As you can see, our corner bead, once pressed on, the mud is oozing out from behind it. At this point, just wipe it down. Adjust if you need to. There's one good thing about using the hot mud or taping mud when installing this particular bead. If you use spray adhesive, once you put it on, you were stuck with what you had. It was very difficult to move. But using taping compound or hot mud, you are allowed to be able to move it around when necessary or where necessary. When installing a corner bead, it's important to make sure that you measure across both sides as you're applying your bead and wiping it down, that once you put it where you want it to be, it doesn't shift. So it's very possible to use nails to just tack in these little areas here, not to put all the way into the board or into the framing, but just to tack it to hold the corner bead and keep it from shifting. The only drawback is if you use masonite, it's going to be very difficult to get your nail to embed and hold into that masonite without using screws or something. But that way everything is consistent. The measurement across here is the same all the way down. Also, when you're in the process of wiping down your corner bead, not only making sure that the inner dimensions are equal all the way down, also make sure that the wall is level, the corner bead's going on level and not waving. At this point, it's very important when you're wiping down your corner bead, especially bullnose, to keep the corner of it as clean as possible. So I would like to using a rubber drywall knife. So basically you just fold it very, very tightly and wipe your edge in between coats. The last thing you want to have is a layer after layer of hot mud, dried hot mud, edges on your bead to try to clean off on your finished product. And now you're ready to use your fiberglass tape. What we'll be doing is taking the fiberglass tape and running it on both sides of your bead. Make sure you don't ride up onto the bead. Stay within that recess. Continue this process by using the fiberglass tape, running it on both sides of your corner bead, all the way around. At this point, we're ready to mix up some more hot mud. It's important to remember that in between your hot mud coats, make sure you thoroughly clean your pans and knives, as well as your bucket and the whip that you use for mixing your hot mud. The residual amounts of hot mud, of the old hot mud, into your new hot mud can cause your fresh hot mud you're mixing up to set up unevenly. It can lump up, clump up, or just fire completely sooner than you anticipate. At this point, you want the consistency of your hot mud relatively thick. Before using your drill, it's a good idea to try to mix it a little bit by hand. You get approximately the consistency you want before turning your drill on. At this point, you have your hot mud mixed to the consistency that you want, and now you're ready to start coating. Now you're ready to start applying your first hot mud coat. Notice the consistency of the mud. It's firm. It's not going to sag. Then you start applying. Nice, consistent, long, even strokes. Make sure when you apply the mud and wipe it that you can see the bead on either side. That way you know that you're not building up too terribly much on both sides of the bowl nose. And it would not be a bad idea at this point, before coating with your hot mud, to take a tape measure and measure across to make sure nothing had moved during the drying process. Feather both sides. Make sure your edge is clean, that you're not leaving excessive buildup. Take your knife, run your edge of your knife along the corner of the bull nose to pull some of the excess hot mud off. I can't stress enough to make sure that this coat has no heavy edges, no excessive buildups on either side, because hot mud, unlike regular all-purpose, does not sand very easily. When wiping in your corner bead, start up in the center of the radius and pull down. And then pull up the rest of the way to your peak. Clean your corners, your edges of any excessive hot mud. And now you're ready to do your top. feather in lightly. And wipe your edge. Feather in. Now at this point you can use the rubber knife again and clean the edges of your bull nose. Now at this point, this hot mud coat needs to dry thoroughly. At that point, we'll sand it back and apply 2 coats with all-purpose mud. One with a 10-inch knife, and then we'll finish off the arch by coating it up with a finish coat with a 12-inch knife. At this point, we sanded down our hot mud coat, applied our first coat of AP, all-purpose, and now we're ready to sand our all-purpose coat to put our final skim on. We'll be sanding this coat with 100 grit sandpaper. Now we're ready to apply our finish coat using a 12-inch knife. Keep each coat as clean as possible. Clean your metal. Feather your edge again. Apply nice even coats. At this point, use your plastic knife or rubber knife again and clean your edges, the corner of your corner bead. Allow this coat to dry thoroughly and you're ready for finish sanding. At this point we sanded down our finished coat with 220 screen on our sanding pole. Now we're ready to use fine, extra fine sanding sponge to sand in the perimeter as well as the bead itself. And after you're done sponge sanding, use your water sponge. Sponge in the perimeters all the way around, blending your mud into your drywall paper. Well, we're at the end of our project, so let's recap what we've learned. Making sure you have plenty of backing, using quarter board or masonite, and having the rough side out. If you're using masonite, prime it so it doesn't have a tendency to swell or separate due to the moisture of the drywall compound. Using staples, glue, taping compound, hot mud to install your corner bead. Coating with hot mud and finishing with all-purpose compound, as well as finish sanding. Well, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time on Drywall Techniques.